As we look at the past, I would hope we can get inspired by looking at the craftsmanship and looking at the details and long to build better because we see beautiful things like this. So I'm Brent Hull. I have a company, Hull Millwork, Hull Homes. We do architectural millwork, we do custom home building, and I'm a historic geek, and so we are doing these buildings and brews just to get together, talk about building and historic building in general. Just, I love it, and so I'm going to talk about it, and if I talk too long, get more beer. Trying to think if I forgot anything. All right, so today we're doing the federal style. What's that? Oh, yeah. I am on the Instagram, Hull Millwork, Hull Homes, and also if you're on YouTube, you can do the subscribe button. So we're always pushing out new content and stuff like that. We're doing the federal period, okay? And if this is your first time, we did the Georgian period last time, and it's on YouTube live, and you can actually go back and watch that again. We are kind of in here now, okay? So this is my American architectural history deal. We talked about the Georgian period last time. We're now moving forward into the federal period. The federal period is kind of after the Revolutionary War into the 1820s. So we're early 1800s. You know, we got the War of 1812, fight with Britain. That has some consequences. We've got the Louisiana Purchase. You know, right happens in 1803. Our country grows by a ton, and so there's a lot of cool stuff happening here. And you know, we're gonna talk about all that. Named after federalism, kind of the main governmental body at the time, the Federalist Papers. If anybody Hamilton fans here, I was going to sing a Hamilton song. I won't. But that was kind of the federal style. It's really neoclassical, okay? And we're going to talk about what neoclassical is and why it's new classicism. Adam-esque, we're going to be talking about Robert Adam, the English architect who kind of launches all of this and why it's launched. Thomas Jefferson, not really federal in styling, but certainly parallel here. Going along here, he's a very important person in the architectural history of America at that time, and so he's definitely someone we need to study and talk about. His buildings aren't necessarily federal, but they're built at the same time. Jeffersonian architecture you may have heard of. It's all part of this period. The builder, each time we do one of these, we talk about a famous builder. The famous builder this time is going to be a guy named Samuel McIntyre. Last time we talked about William Buckland out of Maryland. This time it's Samuel McIntyre, a wonderful gentleman, and he really just a class act. And then as far as the building trade, the lost art of building, last time we talked about masonry, and so this time we're going to talk about woodworking, joinery, carving, all that kind of stuff. So should be awesome. America, what's happening in the 1800s, right? You've got the population swelling, the country's really growing. Part of it's growing because we just, purchased half of it, of what the United States is today in the Louisiana Purchase. The top city now is New York. Remember last time in 1760 is Philadelphia. New York is just exploding in growth. We'll look at that. We also have an interesting thing going on in this period, Washington, D.C., right? Washington, D.C. is a new capital of the country. After the Revolutionary War, we decide we're going to have to have our own capital. And so we have a lot of commercial building. We'll talk about that, the rise of the architect in this period. There are still regional differences. Essentially, our country is a really young country in 1760. It's a more mature country in the 1800s. It's getting even more so, but we are in growth pains, and you'll see some of that. The regional differences aren't as pronounced. We're still in a handmade era. Industrialization really doesn't come into building 1840 maybe. Steam planing mills are 1840-ish, and that kind of thing where it starts to introduce industrialism into building. So it doesn't really happen yet. And building skills are growing more specialized at this time, and we'll talk about that. Population now in 1800 is 5.3 million. It was 1.5, so we've tripled in growth. Look at New York. It was 14,000. Now it's 60,000. Philly kind of doubles in growth. Baltimore is now up in the top 5 or 10. Boston doesn't grow that much. We're going to talk about Salem, kind of an interesting story, talking about Salem, Mass. What's the difference between Georgian and federal? Okay, so as we transition from this period of looking at Georgian architecture and then going to federal, what's happened? What's going on? Which one's Georgian? Which one's federal? It's a coin flip, 50-50 chance. Who's going to guess? Richard?
The right is federal.
The right is federal. Attaboy. Get a free beer. This is Georgian, right? This is federal, okay? We'll talk about why this is, but it's all this dainty little detailing up here. There's more of it in this fireplace. Heavy, bold, you can see that, right? The moldings that project more, the carvings are richer and fuller. It's a different aesthetic, it's a different feel, and I'm going to show you why that happens and what's going on. Same thing here. This is a 1760s Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, wonderful house. This is another Samuel McIntyre house, just more refined, more dainty, more careful, Georgian versus federal. Federal architecture looks like this, right? You're not going to see a huge difference in a Georgian house versus a federal house, except you begin to see fan lights over doors, this Palladian window, this kind of webbing over here, this kind of restraint in the facade here. It's all very federal. I'm talking about a guy named Charles Bulfinch out of Boston. He designed the State House there. I talked about Thomas Jefferson and Monticello. Of course, the masterpiece of UVA and the lawn there. There's a great house in Baltimore we're going to look at briefly. It's called the Homewood House. Has this kind of detailing. It almost looks like Wedgwood furniture or Wedgwood pottery, right? And then this crazy stuff, right? This is Robert Adam, okay? Now, where did he get this idea? Well, why is he doing that? We're going to talk about all that. And then this is the, if this is the English version of the high style, right? This is the American version, right? Much more restrained, not as over the top. Then this is Samuel McIntyre. We're going to look at a few rooms from Winter Tour. And so, this period, if you want to walk up to a house and you're wondering whether it's Georgian or federal, you can look at things like the fan lights, leaded glass around the doors. You'll notice that the architectural features are more dainty and not as heavy and bold. We'll talk about why moldings change from these thick, heavy Georgian moldings to these very fine federal moldings. Everything's still handmade. This is a typical federal house. This is Homewood House. This is John Hopkins in Maryland. Notice, okay, that it's still very classical, very symmetrical still. We've got this main body, we've got the wings, right? Remember talking about the Palladian plan where it's main body, the wings that go out. We looked at Drayton Hall and kind of the original plan for that. Mount Vernon has the same thing with the wings that go out, right? So it's still very classical, but it's when we get up into the details and we look at the columns and this kind of fan light is so typical federal. It's just, it is, right? Notice how dainty these details are up here. This kind of decoration is very different from the kind of things we saw from the William Buckland House in Annapolis. The moldings down the hall, right? Looking at this area and kind of a tighter view of it, these very, very small, the size and scale is really shrunk down, but this kind of detailing is all very typical federal. The colors too, you'll see these blues and pinks and these kind of crazy colors in that historical era. It's all part of that. What are carpenters doing? What are craftsmen doing at the time? The Carpenters Company is something we studied last time. They started in 1724. We talked about them kind of during the Georgian period. They're still active. They're still very involved. After the Revolutionary War, they incorporated with a Quaker group. So that was the second group that they joined with. This is kind of the last era of the Carpenters Guild. Okay, this is the last era of when that when they have this kind of influence. We looked at the articles. This was the article in the book I was explaining last time. This is still 1786, and so it's still in that federal period, but they were more of a Georgian company. We looked at their plan books. We're going to talk more about those details. And so, and then of course, commercial construction, right? I mean, the whole point of this whole series is to study what construction looks like. It's buildings, right? And what carpentry looked like and how it occurred. Commercial construction, the rise of Washington, D.C. There was a design competition. A nobody, a gentleman architect, a guy named William Thornton, designed it and won the competition. So it's kind of crazy. So that's what's going on. That's the world of 1800, right? That's the kind of, there's buildings still going on. We've come out of the Revolutionary War. There's growth happening. The country is exploding. Some parts are growing faster than others.